Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Talkin Knicks. I'm joined by Kenny and Tom this week. We had a not a great week, I would say. We've had worse weeks too, though. But hey, let's talk Knicks. Uh, Knicks went 1-2 this week. Not our best. We beat the Jazz, lost to the Grizzlies without Marcus Gasol and Mike Conley, then lost to the Lakers without Lonzo Ball. I mean, Lonzo Ball's also not a superstar at this point, so I don't know how much that really matters. Also this weekend we got to watch. I got to watch the Knicks lose by 20 to the Lakers, and as soon as that game was over, I changed the channel just in time to see the Patriots score the game-winning touchdown in their game. So we're gonna see the Patriots in another Super Bowl, which is the worst. Yeah, we're all from New England. We're all from Connecticut, but I think we all hate the Patriots. Is that right? You guys hate the Patriots too? Kenny, you definitely do. Tom?
Affirmative.
Yes, you do. And we all have our own reasons. Some people just think it's because they cheat on every play, but that's not it. And I was wondering that. Why do I hate the Patriots so much if I'm from New England? But my aunt, when I was a little kid, the Patriots were supposed to move to Connecticut. They had signed a deal with the governor of Connecticut to move. Then at the last minute, they went back on it, and they built their stadium in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts. I don't know if you've ever been to Foxborough, but it is in the middle of nowhere. It's not in Boston. You guys probably picture it being in Boston, but it's not. It's just in a random town in the middle of nowhere in Massachusetts. So that's why we hate the Patriots in our blood. And then on top of that, they decided to cheat in every game that they play. So
yeah, Greg, they used Connecticut as leverage to get the team to stay in Massachusetts. I know they were like, "We're going to leave, we're going to do it," and but hey, this is talking Knicks, Greg. So let's
Hey, I had to get that off my chest. I need people to know. All these people hate the Patriots too, and they need to have.
We're not even going to mention them. We're not even going to mention like Connecticut-born and bred Aaron Hernandez just going around killing people.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
From Connecticut. Did that get too dark real quick?
All right, let's get on to
forget about that.
We're editing this out.
Patriots Super Bowl, gonna be terrible. Hopefully, none of us watch it. Let's see. How was your weekend, guys? We all hung out this weekend. We went to a UConn-Villanova game. Kenny went to Villanova. We're both from Connecticut. We're all from Connecticut. Nova won by a lot.
I also went to UConn.
Kenny also went to UConn.
Yeah, I went. So yeah, I went to UConn and Villanova. So I've had kind of a blessed life in my college basketball rooting experience, having rooted for UConn my entire life. They won 4 national championships since 1999, and then Villanova with their 2016 championship that I actually went to, and I was there for the Chris Jenkins game-winning 3 at the buzzer, which was wild. But I was there with Tom's brother who went to UConn and his wife and Tom's brother's wife who went to UConn. So I just kind of sat there quietly because they're 2 teams that I like. And I've mentioned to pretty much everyone that I watched them both. And right now Villanova is just so much better. Like it's weird that they play in the same league.
Yeah. And
the same division.
You're a front runner too. So it makes it easy for you to root for Villanova.
Yeah. Pretty much, I'm a front runner, which is why I root for the Knicks.
Exactly. All right, Tom, how was your weekend?
It was pretty good. After that UConn Villanova game, which wasn't all that exciting, that was over pretty early on. But we then went to my brother and his wife's house where they just adopted a new puppy. Played with that puppy for a while, so that was it cheered me up. It was like a therapy dog. And then today, I continued my fiance and I continued our condo search. So we're looking for a place to live. We're over here doing big things. The Knicks, on the other hand, are not.
Yeah, great transition. And I think some people tune in to hear us talk about the Knicks, but other people tune in to hear about your condo search. I know it's been going on for a few weeks now.
We're talking about putting in an offer right now. So it's in Fairfield of all places.
Oh, wow. So some people might stop listening after next week if that's true.
Yeah, so take it away.
Let's get started. First game of the week, Grizzlies. No Marcus Gasol. Mike Conley's been out for a little bit. We just happened to get really lucky. No Marcus Gasol. Deontay Davis starting the first game of his career. Just dunks the ball every single play. not only him, just everybody. No defense being played whatsoever by the Knicks. Alley-oops, three-pointers galore. Just a terrible, terrible scene. Knicks go down by a lot late, and then they finally decide to make their charge a little bit too late, but maybe not. They get it to within 3 with 25 seconds left is when they call a foul on Kristaps Porzingis for holding JaMychal Green, maybe one of the bigs, on a box out. And that's just a thing that happens on every single rebound that comes off the rim. And it was a tough call. I mean, technically, sure, I guess that's a foul, but at that point in the game, and considering that the rebound really wasn't, like, it was close to those two guys, but it wasn't all that close. Like, if Kristaps didn't hold him, I don't think he would have gotten to the ball. I think Jarrett Jack still would have grabbed it. Then after that, Tyreke Evans turns it over, or kind mildly. He loses the ball in the backcourt, and then we have a jump ball situation. Nobody on the Knicks ever really has it. Tim Hardaway Jr. is grabbing for it. It looked at, like, at the end, like Kristaps Porzingis was actually the person who had more possession of the ball with Tyreke Evans, but nonetheless, the refs decided that there's a jump ball between Tyreke Evans and Tim Hardaway Jr., which is less advantageous than us having Kristaps jumping. First jump, because there's more than 2 jumps in this story for some reason. First jump, ref throws it up. Tim Hardaway Jr. is like, this guy's stepping over the line. This is terrible. This shouldn't be allowed. So the ref just restarts for some reason. It was a very weird situation. It was like a jump ball violation. And, I mean, I looked at the NBA rules, and I'm not sure what – I don't think the Knicks should have had the ball. I think a re-jump was the correct call. But it's actually not clear in the rules what should happen under those circumstances. So we got the second jump coming. It's a 3-point game at this point, 17 seconds left, 18 seconds left. And Courtney Lee says he saw where Tyreke Evans was trying to hit the ball after the first jump, so he went and stood there. And Dylan Brooks is jockeying for position to get that spot with Courtney Lee, and Courtney Lee wasn't having it. He was like, no, I'm standing here, like, get out of here. So they start going back and forth a little, and then the ref, not appreciative of it, gives Courtney Lee a technical in a 3-point game with under 20 seconds left, and that just diminishes all hope of a comeback, basically. All of a sudden, we're down 4 with this jump ball. Even if we get it, best we can do is come within 1, and then we'd be fouling to try to tie it. So, I mean, we're not saying – like, the Knicks were on their way to losing that game even before that happened, considering the best we could have done was tie at that point and pray for overtime. But it wasn't helpful. Kenny, what did you think of that?
Yeah, and I think he gave a pretty good play-by-play, blow-by-blow there. I was not appreciative of it. Like, if you watch the play, Courtney Lee on the technical, like, he's talking, he's not, like, demonstrative or anything. He's talking to the guy next to him, and the guy next to him is, like, he's prodding him on and doing stuff too. So Dylan Brooks is not innocent here, and I'm just not sure why they decided to call a technical on Courtney Lee there. Like, that's something that happens literally every play of the game. Also, they messed up, like, that first tip, so I don't know what they were doing, why they were spending so much time waiting for the second tip.
Yeah, that's true. He should have just gotten the ball and thrown it back up.
Yeah, saying. Like, I'm not sure why there was such a lag there, but Courtney Lee, if he's standing there, him out of the way. So, like, I understand where Courtney Lee is coming from. And, like, if the ref wants to go over there and tell Courtney Lee to knock it off, then there's 2 guys involved there. So the NBA reviewed it. They said that, they agreed with the call. But I've wondered to myself if this was a situation like Draymond Green had a few years ago where he was in the playoffs and like 2 of his technicals got rescinded because they went back and looked at them. I'm like, if that happened, would they really go back and say that was the right call? Because I don't think they would. I think right now they're just trying to, kind of back up their ref, who was situation and made a call that's never been made in the NBA history. But like you said, they were on their way to losing that game. There was really no the referee to single-handedly decide it, and I don't think that's why people go to the game. So, did not make me too happy with the game's ending.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw what the referee said. He said
foul language.
Yeah, he said he was saying foul language to the young kid, or something like that, or something he deemed inappropriate to the young guy. It was very
Dylan
weird.
Brooks' virgin ears couldn't handle it, or something. Like he was looking out for the rookie or something.
It's very
bizarre.
It's actually kind of funny that's what they said, just because the trash talk that they were talking is like Dylan Brooks was like, "Who are you?" and then the ref doesn't even know the kid's name. So that's actually kind of funny.
That is good stuff.
Tom, sorry I cut you off there.
Well, I was gonna say, we've probably gone in on the refs enough that call was pretty unconscionable, but at the same time, like Greg was hinting at, the Knicks were not doing themselves any favors here. So I got a few stat of the games to throw at you guys here. So like you mentioned, Greg, it seemed like Deontay Davis was dunking every shot, and that's because the Knicks actually allowed 35 shots at the rim and let the Grizzlies shoot 63% from there. Usually the Knicks only give up 24 shots at the rim and allow opponents to shoot 60%. So usually the Knicks are the second best team in the league at defending the rim, but this time they gave up 11 more shots than normal. For context, the Magic give up the most shots at the rim per game, and that's 28. So, Grizzlies just dominated on the interior, but not just that, they're also dominating from the outside too. In total, Memphis took 28 threes, and 26 of those were either open or wide open, according to NBA.com. So they weren't defending inside, they weren't defending outside. It's hard for me to feel too bad for them, even despite the officiating blunders.
Yeah, the Knicks looked bad for I don't know, three and a half quarters. They just made a very late surge that got you excited, but even then, it was within three with 40 seconds left, and that was our hope to try and get one stop and then tie it and send it into overtime. That's not where you want to position yourself to try to win a basketball game. You don't want to win in overtime. We'd like to win in regulation. And again, this was a team that, like, some of the names on this roster you've never heard of. And even if you are a regular NBA fan, you don't know these guys. I mean, Deontay Davis getting his first start. I think he was a second-round pick out of Michigan State. Fell due to injury. One of the Harrison twins. I mean, Tyreek Evans was absolutely going off. But in the end, he only shot 9 for 21, which is under 50%. But it just, nothing went right. I don't know. It was just very bad. Very bad. I have nothing more to say. You guys got anything else? Nothing. Let's.
I'm just gonna kind of echo what Tom was saying, that if you give up nothing but dunks and threes, like, you're probably not going to do too well, and they didn't do well. So that's that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the good game of the week. We beat the Jazz. I think this was the game that we thought we were going to lose. We thought we could beat the Grizzlies. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA. Lakers, also one of the worst teams in the NBA. But Jazz they're bad, but you could see them having the talent to make the playoffs. Maybe not so much anymore since they've fallen back. But we were lucky. And yeah, as Kenny just mentioned, Rudy Gobert had been out for over a month, and he was back just in time to face the Knicks. So it felt like after lucking out and not having to face Marc Gasol, this is just what we got for not taking advantage of that. We got Rudy Gobert coming back, and he balled out. He shot 7 for 10, 23 points, 14 rebounds, airballed 2 free throws. But other than that, he was pretty dominant against the Knicks. So what did you see in that game? It was there's a lot of questions about Hornacek's rotations. I think he used 11 or 12 players in the first quarter, So Tom, what do you think about that game?
Yeah, Greg, on the last pod, I talked about us showing a little bit more accountability for our predictions, and I will be the first to say I predicted this as the only loss. So I said they were going to go 2-1 this past week. They ended up going 1-2, losing the 2 games I expected them to win. So I was just wrong on every aspect last week. And at this point, I should expect the Knicks, expect the unexpected from the Knicks. But this was kind of a weird game, and if we just want to focus on crunch time specifically, the lineup we had out there was a surprising one. The play we were going, our go-to play down the stretch there was a Trey Burke, Michael Beasley pick and roll, which we went to a couple times in a row when we needed a bucket, and one of them actually worked.
Yeah,
but
Beasley.
It really kind of broke my heart to see that as our go-to play. If you'd have told me that even last week, I would have laughed at you. And here we were. And I mean, it worked. I can't complain too much. Took a beat the Jazz, who've been very good at home. But that was tough to see, I got to say.
Yeah, and down the stretch of that game, the play that worked was Beasley hitting a jumper. Was it? Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, Beasley hitting a jumper, and then after that, Courtney Lee came down, just took a horrible like fadeaway at the free throw line with a defender in his face with 9 seconds left on the shot clock. And that's right after Beasley hit a shot. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going off, and Porzingis is the best player. So that can't happen. And then the possession after that was another Trey Burke pick and roll where Trey Burke took a shot. And that is the very last person you want taking a shot out of those 5 people in this crunch time situation. And so the Knicks were actually up, I don't know, 10 with about 2.5 minutes left, 9 or 10.
Greg, it was up 10 with about 2 minutes and 7 seconds left.
Up 10.
About that, right, Dom?
It was about that. I'm all over it.
All right, and then somebody got fouled, and then they made 1 free throw, missed the second. Joe Johnson, or somebody got Joe Johnson got the rebound. Pump faked Beasley, then threw the ball up at the rim, which is technically a shot. It's shot enough to get 3 free throws. Refs are very arbitrary nowadays about when they give you 3 free throws or not. I mean, I think it was the right call to give them free throws, but
I don't.
Sometimes the refs are just like, no. So
we saw that tonight.
Yeah, we saw that
Tim Hardaway Jr.
With Tim Hardaway Jr. We'll get to that, but what do you think about that crunch time, Kenny? We were up 10. We felt comfortable, and then you felt like we were going to lose.
Yeah, like I think we're going to talk about the rotations a little bit later and how they've been weird. This was down the entirety of the stretch, like Tom said. We had kind of a weird lineup out there, and we didn't send Porzingis and Tim Hardaway Jr. back out until there was 4 minutes left in the game. And then they went on an immediate run that you were talking about, and to go up 10, and then they just kind of decided they forgot how to play basketball, which is kind of a thing they do once in a while, like at least once per game, usually around the third quarter. And it's not great. And you wonder whether it's the personnel that he's putting in and that Hornacek is putting in and when he's putting them in, or if there's just mental lapses or kind of what's going on there. But I don't kind of know how to explain it. On the other hand, I think during that stretch, Utah was doing kind of some ridiculous things. I'm not sure if it was then that Donovan Mitchell banked in a 3, and I was like, oh well, that means we lost, because if you're banking in 3s like from that angle, then it's not looking good for us. So a combination of just bad play and bad luck, and the Knicks just have to do better of putting games away rather than letting them linger.
I think one thing we should probably talk about here is that the fact that Frank Ntilikina only played just under 5 minutes. And this was kind of a game where we wanted to see a matchup between Donovan Mitchell, who's been the rookie sensation, and Frank, because we've seen what Frank can do. We've seen him even shut down Kyrie Irving during stretches. And so it would have been fun to see him match up on Donovan Mitchell a bit more here. And he did struggle in his couple of minutes, but he got yanked right away and just didn't get a second opportunity, really. So it was kind of weird to see Jeff go in that direction. and obviously playing Burke down the stretch didn't help Frank's cause. But the thing is, I do think Frank can play the off guard position pretty capably at times too. So he doesn't have to be the point guard at all times. That'd be my point if we're going to try and get Frank more minutes.
Yeah, and it was tough. Frank came in the first quarter, or came in early in the first half, and he got called for. I mean, he wasn't playing his best, but he got called for like a very soft offensive foul, and then Hornacek yanked him after that. After 3 minutes, I think it was, and he didn't go. He went back to him for 2 minutes in the second half, which just hurt. I mean, I don't know. Trey Burke looked okay. I mean, he hit some shots, but Trey Burke also did a lot of picking up his dribble and panicking, which isn't exactly what you want from your point guard down the stretch. So, Kenny, you're the Frank guy. What were you thinking?
I am the Frank guy. I am the Frank guy, and I agree with what Tom was saying that I don't know what Jeff Hornacek is doing with Frank in that position. Like you guys said, he did struggle in his few minutes, but like it was 5 minutes. How much could you possibly struggle to not play your rookie 8th pick in that situation? And I think it's always been a confidence thing for Frank, where sometimes he'll go out there and he'll look great, like the first half tonight, and sometimes he just won't look like he has confidence. And this can't help your confidence, getting yanked after 3 minutes, and then they send Trey Burke out and let Trey Burke and Jarrett Jack play the rest of the game. Like, I just don't get what your play is. Like, are you trying to see what you have in Trey Burke? Are you trying to audition him? Are you trying to get him on the future lineup? Because he doesn't have the same upside as Ntilikina at this point in his career. So, he does fit that mold of a younger guy that we could have on our team, but he's not going to be the future. And when you look at the Jazz, who are struggling this year, but just kind of give Donovan Mitchell room to do whatever the hell he wants, like that's kind of a good situation for him, and that's what I'd like to see for Frank is let him, he's struggling a little bit, let him play. Donovan Mitchell went for, what did he go for? I think 17 points or something like that, but he did not play well. He didn't play well at all, and I think he shot like probably 7 for 20, 7 for 21, something like that. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm going from memory. And he didn't play well at all. And then like down the stretch, he hit some big shots. He hit that bank 3, but he also had a bunch of drives to the hoop, and he scored a bunch of points in the fourth quarter. And you kind of seeing the difference of the situation there, where Utah doesn't have much in terms of scoring, so they just let him do what he wants. He wasn't shooting well in the first half. Fine, let him keep playing. Frank's not playing well for 2.5 minutes. We're gonna yank him out. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And in that fourth quarter, he had Ron Baker and Trey Burke in at the same time for, I don't know, it was not very long. He put him in. I think Baker was already in, and then he put in Burke when we were up 6, and then like immediately it was tied, and we called timeout, took out Baker, and then we won from there. But just he went back to Burke and Baker in the fourth quarter today, which was very odd considering how quickly they went -6 in that other fourth quarter. Frank, as Tom mentioned, should be able to play the second guard position, and it seems like Hornacek has more confidence in Ron Baker, Tom.
Yeah, Greg, I was going to say I'd be comfortable with Frank taking all of Baker's minutes at the off guard. I mean, if you're just looking for defensive tenacity, then that's what you have to tell Frank. That's what you're out there for. Like, you're not out there during this stretch to run the offense. You're out there to get after people on defense. And he has the size and length to do it. And he just needs to be empowered, like Kenny was saying. I mean, yeah, the juxtaposition there with Donovan Mitchell struggling through the first 3 quarters, and then just he still had the keys. The team still had the confidence in him to make the plays down the stretch, and he was their engine in crunch time and looked pretty good, especially for a rookie. He looked very good. So you'd just like to see Frank given similar opportunities. But here, I mean, we're talking about a game in which we won. But and Greg, you had a funny tweet after the game that even when they do win, it doesn't look fun, right? Like,
yeah,
there were plenty of opportunities there for the Jazz actually to tie the game in the last few seconds. I know Joe Johnson missed one of a corner three was just wide open to tie the game. And then so he and Joe Ingles missed other wide open threes to tie. And it was a fortunate closing of the game.
And Tim Hardaway Jr. missed 2 free throws that would have made it a 2-possession game in order to leave it a three-point game before they missed those 3 wide open threes.
Yeah, it was Mitchell, Joe Johnson, and then Ingles. And as Tom mentioned, the possession before that, Joe Johnson had also missed another open 3. So yeah, the Knicks were doing a lot of praying down the stretch, and it worked out. Let's get to a positive. Tim Hardaway Jr.'s first game back starting. This guy went off, and he also went off in this Lakers game today, especially from 3-point range. And we've been complaining about the 3 all year. Tom, talk to me about him hitting 6 for 7 from 3. I know that's not sustainable, but just being capable of doing that, what that does for this team. We talk about it a lot, but let's talk about it again because it actually happened this time.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely encouraging to see because the game before, I think he'd gone something like, I have it up here, 2 for 7 from 3. So you're thinking, oh no, like Tim Hardaway back to his old ways where he came in, he was shooting like 30% from 3 before he got hurt, which is not ideal, especially considering just how good his stroke looks and how confidently he takes it. But then, yeah, against the Jazz, he was on fire. He was hitting them. It didn't matter if people were in his face. He had that 4-point play. He just looked like he had all of his confidence back. Sometimes when guys come back from injury, it takes them a while to get that confidence, but not Tim Hardaway Jr. So that was nice to see. And it was also nice to see it carry over into the Lakers game. So, it'll be nice to see if he can continue this hot streak and get that percentage up. But, at this point, it's nice that he actually gets guarded as a 3-point shooter. Yes. So even when he's not hitting, defenses have to take him into account, right? And they can't sag off him because he's a known shooter in this league, even when he is struggling. It really matters how he bends defenses and opens things up for his teammates.
Yeah, that's well said. One thing to note, maybe he should have been starting earlier. I don't know. Maybe we should have gone back to Tim Hardaway Jr. starting against the Grizzlies. But, I mean, hindsight's 20/20. I don't know. But that also seems like a pretty fairly straightforward idea to start your second-best player. But I don't know.
And, Greg, I got one other stat I want to throw out there because it's going to be kind of a theme for this past week is despite the win, the Jazz outscored the Knicks 23-7 on second chance points, which is, again, at the beginning of the season, the Knicks were the best team in the league at offensive rebounding and getting second chance opportunities. In this one, a huge disparity in favor of Utah. So that's just something to look out for, and it's going to come up later again in the pod.
Yeah, definitely. Ken, you got any closing thoughts on the Jazz win?
No. I think I'm ready to move on and face the music for tonight.
All right, yeah. We had an ugly game tonight against the Lakers. It was fun to watch, at least for the first, 2 3/4 of the game. And then the Lakers just went off at the very end of the third quarter. And I know Kenny had a funny line. Hornacek put in Hernan Gomez and O'Quinn because Beasley got his 5th foul. And that's a very awkward duo to have up front. That's just 2 centers who I don't think they don't play together, if ever. Maybe they've played a couple minutes together, but they just got run out of the building just to close the third. And the Knicks have been very bad at closing quarters for a very long time. So they just got lit up to end the third, and then that just carried over into the fourth, and they ended up losing by 20 to the Lakers. So, Kenny, face this music for me. What did you see?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this before, but it was similar to the Memphis game where the Lakers were just shooting a lot of open threes and getting a ridiculous amount of dunks. I know you said Julius Randle had at least 4 dunks. Probably he went 11 for 17. I guess all 11 were dunks. So maybe play some defense, maybe grab a rebound. I was actually surprised at looking at the stats that the Lakers only had 12 offensive rebounds because it seemed like every single possession they got at least 3 shots up. So, that's no way to win if you're going to, give up dunks every play and give up threes. So it's just painful.
Yeah, they're giving up dunks early and often. Very first 2 possessions of the game for the Lakers were Julius Randle dunks. And then that theme didn't stop. You thought it would probably stop since the very first 2 possessions were dunks, but every single possession throughout the entire game was a dunk.
And you texted me early in the game and said we were getting Brook Lopez from 3 because they just weren't guarding him. And he hit, 3 or 4 threes very early, ended up 4 for 6 for the game. And it's like, you're going to do this again? Just guard someone when they're at the 3-point line.
Okay, then one more question for you.
Yep.
We got Caruso'd, right?
We got Caruso'd. That was weird. I've never even heard of this guy. So, I don't know if this is something we've regularly talked about on the pod. I think it is, mostly with the Bulls and Nwaba. But it seems like every game, some random guy that I've never heard of just goes off on the Knicks for a career day. And I don't even know his first name. His last name is Caruso.
Alex
Caruso. And he had himself a ball game. He went plus 24 in 31 minutes, had 9 points and 8 assists. He doesn't even look like a basketball player. You see this guy, he's I'm going to calm down for a second, but he's balding. He doesn't look athletic at all, although Tom showed me a dunk the other day that he had that was pretty good. But the Knicks just find a way to make bad players look really good, which is the opposite of what you want from your basketball team.
Yeah, and we talk about it a lot with Jake and TJ McConnell. I think the term we use for it is getting McConnelled, because he did it last year. He had an actual game winner against us, game-winning buzzer beater, and then this year he just went off against us. But let's hear what you got, Tom. Were there any positives here? You could continue to build on the negatives, like this offensive rebounding, second chance points, but let's start with the negatives. Actually,
Greg, I've got more. I've got more of those. I guess. It started with the Brook Lopez threes to start. Enes Kanter just couldn't get out to the perimeter to defend those on the pick and pops. And so Hornacek's counter to that was let's go even bigger. Let's get Hernan Gomez out there. And it was crazy because you'd think with all that size that the Knicks would be able to do at least one of a few things, like defend the rim, prevent second chance opportunities. Well, do some things. But instead, so the Lakers actually lead the league in shots from the restricted area per game at 35 per game. They got those 35 again tonight, but usually they shoot 63% from the restricted area. Tonight they shot 77, which would be by far the best mark in the league.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. But
yeah,
we have all these big dudes down there. They're not protecting the rim at all, but they're also not grabbing defensive rebounds either. The Lakers were plus 10 in second chance points tonight. We were getting beat in that respect on the boards and inside, but then also the Lakers outscored the Knicks 22-6 in fast break points. So and that's partly because we had all these big guys on the floor who were just lumbering up and down. The Lakers are going with Larry Nance Jr., with Julius Randle at the 4 and 5. Brandon Ingram's playing a lot of 4, and we're countering with just our slowest, biggest guys, and it worked in no way.
Yeah. And I feel like that was the same thing that happened with the Memphis game, because Memphis had no players and they just blitzed us, right? They just, every single chance they had, they got the ball and they ran up the court and they took a layup. And I know Jeff Hornacek said a while ago that we have all this size, we're going to make other teams match up to us instead of trying to go small to match up to them. But that only works if your big guys are an offensive threat to do stuff. Kyle O'Quinn, occasionally he'll have a nice, he'll catch it and he'll dunk it. Maybe occasionally he'll have a nice post move, but he's not really a threat. If that's the case, then they can put their one big on Hernan Gomez, who actually has some post game, and just stick their smaller guy on Kyle O'Quinn, who isn't doing much. So they don't have to match your size if one of your big guys isn't a threat. And then, like you said, they can just run by you because you have two guys, the two people who should be protecting the rim are slower than everyone else on the court, so they're just going to run down and take a layup or a dunk. So I think that's something that that Hornacek's got to figure out. I mean, if there's a possibility, I could see, like, it doesn't make much sense, but if he wants to do this where he's going big, both Hernan Gomez and Enes Kanter have post games. So if you put them both in, maybe the smaller guy that they have to match up with you is guarding someone who actually can play in the post and score on them. Otherwise, you just have two big guys who can't get back on defense.
But the Hernan Gomez Kanter line has its problems.
I know. Believe me, I know. Both of them are terrible at defense and can't stay in front of anyone. But if they want to do something where people have to match up to their size, that's the only thing that makes sense, because those are the only big guys who have any offensive abilities, as far as taking advantage of smaller defenders and, posting up.
Yeah. I mean, that's all the negatives we got. Were there any positives? At the very start of the third quarter, the Knicks were just firing away from three, and it was a good sight. They started out 5 for 5, and then Jarrett Jack started taking some horrible shots. Doug McDermott came in, took some horrible shots, and then the game ended, and we lost by 20 to the Lakers. So, Tom, you think we talk about the 3-point shooting, but you think Tim Hardaway Jr. is back, so that's going to spread the court and everybody's going to start shooting now?
I mean, I don't think offense was the problem in this one. Like, the Knicks got their shots up. They shot almost 55% from the field. They shot 48% from three on a decent number of attempts. They got 25 up. So they shot the ball really well. Offense was not the issue here. I did want to bring up the play of Frank Ntilikina here, who got up. He played 17 minutes. He had 7 points, 3 assists, 1 turnover, but he was minus 14 in terms of plus minus. I just want to point out that sometimes we'll lean a little heavily on that stat, but just going off the eye test here, it looked like in Frank's minutes he was the only one putting in any effort. Like, I was watching it, and the team kept doing poorly every time he was out there, but to me it never felt like it was his fault, and so I'm kind of using that as a positive. I thought he was actually playing decently, and it's just Doug McDermott really struggled. Kyle O'Quinn looked lost out there in his minutes, and I mean, it just seemed like the guys around Frank were struggling.
Yeah, and in that third quarter, I thought he was just put in a position to fail, because he was playing with that big front court of O'Quinn and Hernan Gomez, and then Beasley was in, and I don't want to say it was. I think it was Courtney Lee, but it could have been Baker. And just that, that's a horrible lineup. Obviously, you're going to do a terrible job. Kenny.
And yeah, so that was going to be my positive, but I wasn't going to throw a negative spin on it like Tom with the plus minus. But he started out the game well. He hit a 3, then he had a nice pump fake dribble mid-range shot that went in, and then he had a nice drive to the hoop and scored that way. So we had 7 quick points, and then it's like, okay, like last game he didn't get his minutes, whatever, we're gonna give him minutes now. But then you got to the second half after he played so well, and then they put him in for, it felt like maybe 2 or 3 minutes with that terrible lineup, and then they yanked him again for Trey Burke. And again, what are you doing? You're gonna put in your 8th pick rookie who has been playing, he's been up and down, but this game he's been playing well, and then you're just going to yank him and put in Trey Burke with your actual good players and let him fail? It's like, I don't know what you're doing, man. Let Frankie play.
I got it. It was the last 2:25 of the third quarter. It was Beasley, O'Quinn, Hernan Gomez, Courtney Lee, and McDermott. And then Hernan Gomez went in for Beasley at one point during that stretch. So those were the 5 or the 6 players that were in the game, and they went -7 in 2.5 minutes. So the over half of Frank's plus minus can be attributed to 2 minutes and 25 seconds where he was just playing with an absolutely horrible lineup that was bound to fail. And it did. So, Tom, we're going to talk a lot about Jeff Hornacek's substitution patterns and who he just puts in the game. And it's you never know what's going to happen. It seems like a lot of the time he's just pulling a name out of a hat and saying, all right, you go ahead and go in there and see what happens. The 11 players playing in the first quarter of the Jazz game was unbelievable in my mind. Then Trey Burke and Ron Baker getting minutes in close games in the fourth quarters of back-to-back games was crazy to me. This tall guy lineup was crazy to me. What are you seeing in these rotations? What do you think needs to change? Does he need to figure out who his guys are? Is this how he figures that out, or is there a different way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's a trial and error aspect to his coaching. Like he's just throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks. And I mean, not a lot has stuck recently. It's just the two big lineups have. I mean, we're not even talking about two bigs. We're talking about two centers, like two traditional centers.
Yeah, where a lot of teams play with 0 traditional centers.
Right. They just have no place in the modern NBA. And so, yeah, like this game in particular was competitive through, I think, through 3 quarters. The Knicks were just down by 8 going into the fourth, I think. And it was really that fourth quarter that blew it wide open. And I'd have to go back and see what the rotations were in the fourth, but I mean they just stopped being able to score. They couldn't get to the line to save their lives, and that's been a recurring theme. They've been one of the worst teams in the league at fouling opponents, and also one of the worst at getting free points at the free throw line. So that's another thing is when you have these bigs and you're supposedly pounding it inside, you should be getting to the free throw line more. And I know we are hard on the officiating too, but like. It seems, I mean, there's no doubt about it. The Knicks do settle for the most mid-range jumpers in the league. And we've said before, we sound like broken records. Like, you don't draw fouls that way. So, I mean, that's just something that if you're going to have these bigs, get to the free throw line and get some free buckets, free points.
Yeah. Kenny.
And so I've said it on, a lot of prior pods that I was looking forward to Tim Hardaway Jr. coming back. Because the fourth quarter lineup that I would like to see down the stretch is Frank Ntilikina, Courtney Lee, Tim Hardaway Jr., Kristaps Porzingis, and someone else. Probably maybe McDermott, maybe Lance Thomas for defensive purposes, maybe Beasley to score. But those 4 should be on the court. And, they just haven't done that. What I want, the reason that I want Frank on the court is to play defense, and the reason that I was excited for Tim Hardaway Jr. to come back is I think that a pick and roll down the stretch with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Kristaps Porzingis is the best that we can hope for in those offensive sets. Whereas, when he was out, we were doing a lot of isolation with Porzingis and Beasley, and that's not really Porzingis' game, and Beasley's Beasley, so. Sometimes he's just going to make every shot. Sometimes he's not going to make any of them and just throw it at the rim. But instead of doing that, they've had Trey Burke running the screen and roll with Michael Beasley, like you guys said, and I just don't understand it. So in the last 3 games, Frank Ntilikina has played the least amount of fourth quarter minutes other than Billy Hernangomez, and Trey Burke has played the 5th most on the Knicks in the fourth quarter, and why is that a thing that happened? So, like, in the aggregate, and Trey Burke only played two of the 3 games this week in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, I just don't understand what they're doing there. And like Tom said much earlier in the podcast, Frank can play off the ball. And if we want to have Tim Hardaway Jr. handling the ball, that should be how we end the game. With Tim Hardaway Jr. being the creator, Lee and Ntilikina on the wings ready to shoot, and Porzingis setting the screen and either rolling or popping for easy buckets. But that's just not how it's gone. Instead, Hornacek is just picking the names out of the hats, like you guys said. And, Trey Burke's going to get the 5th most minutes. Ron Baker's going to get the 6th. Jarrett Jackson get the 7th. And then way down below is Frank at 11th and Enes Kanter at 10th. Doug McDermott at 9th.
Tom,
I don't know, man.
One thing I got to ask is when does the stretch start? When do you need to get your guys into the game? because in this Jazz game, Tim Hardaway Jr. had 23 points through 3 quarters, and he didn't come in. He was very, very hot at the very end of the third. I think he might have hit a 3 with 2 seconds left. He hit 2 threes in the last 34 seconds of the third quarter. Doesn't come back in until there's 4:25 left in the game. And then Kristaps Porzingis leaves this Jazz game with 2:46 left in the third quarter. Doesn't come back until there's 4:21 left. Well, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Greg, I think that's a great way to cool off your players if you're thinking maybe they're getting too big of a head. Honestly, that's shocking. That maybe Hardaway is just coming back from injury, and so he's being a little hesitant there. But Porzingis, it just seemed like, and even the announcers were talking about. I think John Barry was mentioning it. It seemed like Hornacek just thought Beasley was the hot hand, and just thought not to put his best player in the game. Like that was the best thing for the team. And it is really puzzling, some of Hornacek's decisions. I'm curious if he's going to start, like, the season's, I don't want to say it's slipping away, but like the odds of making the playoffs are getting slimmer and slimmer. And I wonder if he's just start auditioning guys like Hernan Gomez more to try and raise their trade value. Because right now, I think we've mentioned his in particular is about as low as it's ever been. And so maybe we might be seeing more minutes from him just to see if we can raise his value and flip him for something.
Yeah, and it does feel like the season is kind of slipping away, but there's other teams that are slipping themselves. The Pacers are 5-5 in their last 10. Bucks are 4-6. I mean, you feel like the Bucks will figure it out, but the Pistons are in free fall mode. They're out of the playoff picture right now. They're in 9th, and we're 3 games behind the Bucks, 3.5 games behind the Pacers and 76ers out of 6th place. So it's not, all hope is not lost, but we shouldn't be banking on ourselves being good. We should or I should say we should be equally banking on other teams being bad as much as us being good if we want to make the playoffs. Does that sound right? Does that make sense to you, Tom?
That makes sense, but yeah, if the playoffs are still a thing, which we're fighting for, then I agree that these rotations are going to need to tighten up, and there's going to need to be just fewer 2 traditional center lineups on the court.
Yeah, and so one thing I wanted to mention, Tim Hardaway Jr., they asked him about, I don't know, the season. He said something like, if we don't make the playoffs, that's obviously what we're fighting for. If we don't make it, that's a disappointment. And I was thinking to myself, like, no matter what, they're going to be trying to make the playoffs, because even if they traded all their pieces that were tradable, they would still have Kristaps Porzingis and Tim Hardaway Jr., and that team isn't going to bring you down past some of these horrible teams into the bottom of the lottery. I think we've all talked about it, and we thought that, like, the Knicks, if they stopped trying and did as horrible as they possibly could, the worst they could finish is about the 7th pick. But that hypothetical situation is not going to happen. We're going to have Kristaps Porzingis, who narrowly missed being an all-star starter. Then we'll have Tim Hardaway Jr. back, who's been hot, averaging over 18 on the season. So the tank isn't happening, Kenny.
I'm going to just throw this out, that last year we got the 8th pick, and we had Carmelo Anthony and Kristaps Porzingis. So it's not, I don't think tanking is what a lot of people think it is, where you try to lose. Anyone who's out there is trying to win. It's, you go out there and you play Frank more minutes, even though right now he's not your best shot at winning all the time. You play Hernan Gomez more minutes and let him develop, even though right now he's not your best player. It's about, developing your team while also, seeing what happens. If your team doesn't win those games, it doesn't really matter. But what you have to understand is, even, when the 76ers had all their players injured and were just trotting out a G League lineup last year, they were basically just all their players are trying because they want to stay on an NBA roster. So no one on that team is just like, all right, we're just going to lose this game. They're all trying. They're just not as good. So I think the Knicks, can still, if they end up trading off and they end up, start, getting Frank a lot more minutes and, maybe even at this point getting Trey Burke a lot more minutes and Hernan Gomez a lot more minutes, then I think they're going to be, losing more games. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how exactly how many games that's going to be. And I think they're going to, end up late lottery.
Yeah, that seems about right. Tom, how bad do you think this team could be?
Not bad enough, Greg.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, it doesn't. I'd guess we're about, I don't know, 11 to 14.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it though. Like they've been struggling. How many games back has Hardaway Jr. been healthy? Is it just been 3, 4?
I mean, he played all the games this week. He returned against the Grizzlies, so it's either 4 or 5 or 6 because we had 4 games last week.
Because I just looked up some stats from the past 15 games. I don't want to derail us too much, but I brought it up a little bit earlier. So I just want to say, in the past 15 games, which is a solid sample size, the Knicks are giving up 15.5 second chance points per game, which is dead last in the league. They give up the most second chance points per game in the league, which is pretty wild just considering how many guys they have on the team who are considered very good rebounders in Cantor and O'Quinn and how much size they play with. The fact that they're so poor at defensive rebounding is pretty surprising. I've got a few other rankings here for the past 15 games, and just stop me if anything here sounds interesting or surprising to you. But in the past 15 games, they ranked 27th in points scored off of turnovers, 26th in fast break points, 24th in free throw attempt rate, 27th in opponent free throw attempt rate, and 29th in opponent turnover percentage. So they aren't forcing any turnovers of opponents at all. So that means that they can't get out on fast breaks themselves, but they're allowing opponents to do it at a really high rate. It's just, this is all, I mean, just these past 15 games in which they've been 4-11, they've just struggled in so many facets of the game that you need to be strong in to win in today's NBA.
Yeah, that did not sound very good. All those numbers were bottom 6 in the league, I think. And it's not where you want to be. You would rather be in the top 6, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think kind of the fact that, they've been playing a lot more Ron Baker and a lot less Frank Ntilikina, not great. So that, I mean, Frank, when he was playing well, was forcing a lot of turnovers, and, that seems like a much better way to score points in transition and force. I think Tom said they were in the bottom 2 in turnover percentage. So, play Frank. That's probably going to be my solution to everything, is play Frank and let him get some steals. And so I know a while ago they were saying they were trying to increase their pace, and they do sometimes. And then sometimes they're just like, we'll just the next 6 minutes we're just going to play at a really slow pace and not do anything, which is terrible to watch.
Yeah, and so I got a question for you guys. What do you think is going to happen with this point guard position now that we have Trey Burke? Jarrett Jack has been serviceable, but that's it. That's the word I would use, serviceable. Now we have Trey Burke, who has closed one game against the Jazz and then played in the 4th of a blowout, but he was in when it was close. So what are you thinking about that, Tom? And then we've seen that Hornacek is not ready to give up on Ron Baker, and he's not ready to just blindly give Frank minutes. So what's going on with this point guard position? And is he – I think he has recently been going more to like the 2 point guard lineup. So is that something we're going to see going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice problem to have when you have more than one point guard who's like capable, or what did you say? Competent? What was your word?
Serviceable.
serviceable. It's nice to have multiple serviceable point guards. In this Lakers game, I saw Burke only played 7 minutes. I think that's going to be more indicative of his role on the team. I think that the Jazz thing was kind of an aberration. I don't expect to see him too much, but I said that last week. I said that I didn't think he was going to be much of a factor in the rotation at all, and then he was closing the game against Utah. So I mean, I was wrong about everything last week. I don't know why you guys listen to me at all, but I mean, I do think that the double point guard lineups are something that Hornacek should go to even more. And then, having the wings and just bumping everyone up a position, and playing smaller, playing faster, because we have guys like Courtney Lee and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Beasley who can even get out on the break too. So yeah, Frank at shooting guard would be at the off guard position would be nice, but I think the Hornacek's a little more stuck in his ways than we'd like him to be. And I could just see more traditional single point guard units and just, splitting the playing time there with when Jared Jack's out, Frank comes in, and then with Trey Burke sprinkled in here and there.
Yeah, Tom, let me tell you something about those Trey Burke minutes. So he didn't come into the game until the fourth quarter. He started the fourth quarter right after that stretch where Frank was put in with that horrible lineup, and they scored 7 points in the last 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Or they took an 8-point lead. The Knicks were up 1, or the Knicks were losing by 1 with 2:25 left. And then that terrible lineup got put in. Then suddenly the Knicks were down 8 in the fourth to start the fourth quarter, and that's when Hornacek decided to blame Frank and put in Trey Burke. So that was brutal. Kenny.
So guys, I got a stat bomb for you on Trey Burke's minutes. So this week he played 17 fourth quarter minutes. He played 5 minutes not in the fourth quarter this week. So he played 22 total minutes and 17 of them were in the fourth quarter of close games. Like, what is that?
This is surprising. The closer, Aroldis Chapman.
Just not going to play him at all. And then, here's the time. We have a close game. We need to bring Trey Burke in because Jared Jack is old and I don't want to develop our young point guard, Frank Ntilikina, because I don't trust him. What is that? Come on, Jeff, do better. I was sticking up for you last week saying I didn't think you were going to get fired, but then you go out this week and you pull this stunt and just keep pulling Frank. Come on, man.
I mean, Trey Burke was -5 today in those 7 minutes, so it wasn't as close of a game by the time he left. I think that the result was decided by the time Trey Burke left the game. Let's move on. Let's move on to some trade talk. This one's more of a pipe dream. Kemba Walker's been made available. People are talking about the Knicks. Maybe it's just dreaming because that's where we're at because the Knicks have not been too hot recently. So we got to dream about doing stuff like trade for Kemba Walker. So what are you thinking about Kemba Walker? You're probably more of a realist when it comes to the trades, Tom. So I'm not. I don't know. Let's just say something fun. What do you think about it?
Greg, I don't know how much. Yeah, okay. I'll try and come up with something here. I mean, the thing is, I don't know how, if you're the Hornets, you could trade Kemba Walker without expecting a first-round pick in return, right? Like, he's an all-star caliber player. The team is really good when he's on the court. It's just he can't be on the court all the time, and they fall apart without him. He's actually more than serviceable, I'd say.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he was an all-star.
He was an all-star last year. I don't think he's going to get it this year, but we'll see. I mean, you never know in the East who the coaches are going to pick. But yeah, I think if the Knicks really want to make a run at Kemba, they don't want to give up Frank. I think the fan base doesn't want to give up Frank. So you're going to have to look at a future first. Like, it's going to have to be a Hernan Gomez. Maybe they want Courtney Lee back, and then Kemba's salary isn't that much, so that's probably enough to make it match there. and then a future first, and maybe that'll get it done.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I think we would live with that. What do you think, Kenny?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, guys. I'm the realist here. I don't know why we're going to call Tom the realist. Well, I guess Tom's the realist too. We don't have Jake here, who is the wild speculator.
Yeah, we're getting Kemba, baby. That's Jake.
That would be Jake.
Jake texted us
or Joakim Noah.
A trade scenario that I won't even bring it up on the pod. It was offensive.
It was offensive.
So I think, yeah, I think in Jake's world, maybe, but otherwise, I don't think we're going to get him. I just don't think there's a trade that works. Like Tom said, if you are Charlotte, you either want a young player, and that's Frank. You want a first-round pick, and right now we don't want to give one because we're borderline lottery, and we're probably not winning the championship next year either. So we don't want to do that. Or they want you to take on some of their terrible contracts, which is something we don't want to do because we have enough of those. We have Joakim Noah. We have Timmy, who's been playing well, but he has a very large contract. And we don't want to saddle ourselves down and not be able to do something when Kristaps hits his prime and, pick up some free agents then. The best we could hope for is if, Charlotte thinks that dumping Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is what they need to do. Because he gets paid a lot. He doesn't play a lot because he's always injured. He's not a bad player. He's just always injured. And, his contract lines up with when we would drop Joakim Noah. So he has the next 2 years for $13 million, which not a terrible enough contract, I think, to warrant them dropping Kemba Walker on us. But if they think it is, fine. And then we'll have Michael Kidd-Gilchrist on our books for the next 2 years, and then both him and Noah will come off at the same time, and everyone will be happy, and we'll have a ridiculous amount of money to spend. But also, Kemba Walker is a free agent after next year, so there's no guarantee that he'll stick around. So bottom line, I don't think it's happening. You guys know I love Kemba because we talked about how I'm a UConn and Villanova fan, and Kemba Walker is, UConn's greatest player. So I would love to see him in New York. He loves to be in New York. He won 5 games in 5 days in New York in the Big East tournament. So it would be great. I just don't, see a trade that works.
Hey, yeah. Probably won't happen. Would be cool if we got him. I mean, superstars have been going for less than you'd think, but
to the hometown teams, which is the Knicks.
And yeah, also trades during the season, I feel like people pay more because they know where they stand. So they're saying, all right, this is what we actually need. So they're willing to pay up. So probably won't happen. Let's get into the more realistic trade talk. I know we mentioned it a little last week. I don't know if we talked about who we should be targeting, either as buyers or as sellers. As sellers, we'd probably be trying to trade Courtney Lee. I know you guys talked about it, and Kylo Quinn. The one thing I think about Courtney Lee, people say that he's going to be like 34 in the last year of his contract, so they don't know if he'll live up to it. But Courtney Lee's on a pretty solid deal. He's been balling out this year. I don't know why people are just assuming he's just going to tank the next 2 years. The one thing I kind of think in my head is the Knicks might want a player like Courtney Lee in 2 years for that amount of money. So if they traded him now, then they just have to pay again later to try to get something back like that. There's no guarantee he's going to stay the way he is, but there's also no guarantee that he's going to drop off drastically. He's not a superstar. He's a role player. He's been doing a good job. But what do you think about that, Tom? I know I haven't told you guys that before, but I thought that in my head.
You think that the Knicks may want Courtney Lee on that contract? I mean, I think that might be good for the Knicks because I think he doesn't have the easiest contract to move. Like you said, like he's making over $12 million. He's making $12.2 million next year. He's guaranteed about $12.8 million the year after that. In his 34-year-old season, like that's not nothing for a guy who's gonna likely be in the decline in terms of his on-court performance. I don't know. I don't know how much teams think that Courtney Lee can move the needle in the playoffs. And I'm not saying that as in like Courtney Lee might not. I'm just saying I really have no idea. I'd be curious to know. If I could talk to some GMs, I would. But Cantor, we talk about Cantor as being a possible piece to move. He's making $20 million this year. He's due $18.6 million next year in a player option that he's going to have to opt into that, right?
Yeah, you have to, but especially the market nowadays. After that summer where we signed Noah to that contract, everyone was like, "Wow, that looks bad," and we weren't the only people guilty of that. Alan Crabb got paid. Jan Mahimi got his money. Solomon Hill got his money. Mozgov got paid. Luol Deng. The Lakers pulled off two somehow. I don't know. Evan Turner. Yeah, everybody. And then last summer, people were like, "Wow, we don't want to do that.
Shouldn't have done that."
Long-term deals are also seem to be trending downward unless you're an absolute superstar. I don't know if you're going to be able to lock up a deal for 3 or 4 years anymore. Or probably for 3, but 4 years, I don't know if you're going to get that unless it's like a very cheap deal. So I don't know. Are you thinking that we should be trying to trade Courtney Lee to shed salary? That really never struck me as a thought. I don't know.
I mean, from my end, the sexy thing in being a GM, to say something that Jake would say, is that right now what you want is you don't want to take on salary, and you do want young assets. So I'm talking about moving Courtney Lee for young assets or for draft picks. And how useful is Courtney Lee going to be? Courtney Lee is like a career 400 or 40% 3-point shooter. This year he's shooting 43.3%. Last year he shot really well. He's a knockdown free throw shooter, and he can play solid defense. So I think some team is going to find him valuable, either as a sixth man or as a starting shooting guard who can play defense and knock down shots. I know I've mentioned before that the Thunder seem like a team that could use someone who knows how to play basketball, which Courtney Lee is. And as Cantor, I think he does opt in just because, that's a lot of money. And also he has said how much he enjoys playing in New York. Although, I think that's just his personality, although he did force his way out of Utah. So maybe he would be more vocal if he didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. I would say that where Courtney Lee is at right now, we might be looking at a deal like Iman Shumpert and the Cavaliers' first-round pick for Courtney Lee. What do you think about that deal, Tom?
That's an interesting one because obviously the Cavs would probably want to get off Shumpert's salary. I don't have his contract in front of me. What's he owed?
I think it's about 11, something like that, and he's got a player option for next season, so he may. I also think he's in the same boat where you would pick up the player option because he's been a very bad player this year, so he'd be lucky to get an $11 million contract total on his next deal.
No, I think that's an interesting one. Obviously Cleveland's first round picks are less valuable since their record isn't all that good. So actually,
they'd be low 20s right now.
And the thing is, it's all about just picking up assets, because then if you really want to, you can package them. We have the Chicago Bulls second-round pick, and if that's looking like it's going to be a pretty good pick. So if you package that with a late 20s pick, I think you can move up to maybe even late lottery.
Hey, good idea. What do you guys think about – what do you think Kyle O'Quinn is worth, Tom?
I think he'd probably be worth he's only 27. He's got a player option next year for $4.2 million.
He's probably going to opt out of that. So
yeah, he'll probably opt out.
Yeah, it's funny because he's got his player option for $4 million and Cantor's got his player option for $18 million. So somewhere in the middle is where the center market is at. because you could see Kylo Quinn being the starting center on a bad team. I could see that at least. I mean, otherwise you see him as a rotation center.
And
on
Kylo,
any team.
I know the Cavs have struggled with their front court, and Kylo Quinn seems like a guy that could help them either off the bench, well, probably off the bench to shore up the second unit's front court. He'd be a rental, so I don't know how much that's going to fetch them. Maybe a young middling prospect, or maybe a late first, early second rounder if we're lucky. I feel like his value though is dropping of recent weeks. So if I were the Knicks, I might just pull the plug on that and try to get rid of him.
Would have been a fun trade if the Nuggets weren't so loaded in the front court. Moutier for Kylo Quinn would have been a fun thing to think about.
Yeah, Greg, I like the idea of like trying to get a second draft type guy who just hasn't panned out in his original spot. So someone like Noah Vonleh, who I think had some potential. But yeah, I mean, just teams don't need bigs, like Quinn is a solid backup big, but there's just not much of a market there for that. So
so we're just looking for somebody that the other team doesn't want, who we might want. I don't know. We don't even know. We're looking for a lottery ticket, as Kenny likes to say.
Yeah, pretty much. And right now I'm all about just building up assets. And I should kind of
Kenny, you're a little fuzzy for some reason. I'm going to cut you off there for some reason. Yeah, so I don't know.
Good hosting.
Yeah. So otherwise, what O'Quinn might be able to get you is a late second round pick from one of those teams that actually believes they have a chance, and then $4 million of salary to match. So,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, gotcha. Let's hear what you had to say.
All right. So what I was going to say is I think I should probably kind of revise what I was saying before about taking on salary. My actual position is they shouldn't take on any salary that extends beyond the life of Joakim Noah's deal. Because we're strapped with that, and until that's done, there's not really too many moves we're going to be making. So I'd be fine with taking on, 2 years of a bad salary, and because I don't think Knicks are winning in the next 2 years. So I'm all about just getting assets and being able to either move up in the draft or trade the assets for something else. And that's something that, Greg said a lot was, once you have an asset, you can either trade it or you can keep it, So to the extent we have guys like Kylo Quinn and Courtney Lee, and if we're able to move Cantor, seems unlikely. And if we hit a point where we're selling off, I know I said this last week, but I think Jarrett Jack is a guy that teams would be interested in because he is, what's the word, Greg? Serviceable. He is serviceable. And I think a team that needs a backup point guard, he could be a serviceable backup point guard on a playoff team. So I think he could get traded off. And, really the only people are pretty much have to keep are Porzingis, Ntilikina, probably Tim Hardaway Jr. Whether he's even tradable is a question, but, those kind of have to be our core guys. And maybe even Michael Beasley, just because he gets buckets. If someone needs a scorer off the bench, again, the Thunder need a fifth guy on their team who knows how to play basketball. So maybe that fifth guy could be Michael Beasley. I don't know. I just think that some of these guys could fetch us something, which is better than letting Beasley go at the end of the season for nothing. Let Jack go at the end of the season for nothing.
And then I say you'd rather have an asset than nothing. That came up with the Derrick Rose, Ricky Rubio rumored trade. We eventually just let Derrick Rose walk as a free agent, and the Timberwolves traded Ricky Rubio to the Jazz for a first-round pick. So essentially, if that rumored trade was real, and that the Knicks could have had Derrick Rose for Ricky Rubio, could have had Ricky Rubio for Derrick Rose, they could have had the Ricky Rubio to trade. So you'd rather have an asset than not an asset. If people are about to be free agents like Kylo Quinn, it might be best to get rid of them and see what you can get instead of letting them walk for free. So that's that on the trade front. I almost forgot that we have to continue playing basketball next week. This felt like an end of season pod for some reason. A lot of lost hope in recent weeks, but next week there is hope. We are facing the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday.
That's a win.
Followed by the Denver Nuggets, who are now 500. They're on a downward trend, which is good for us. And then we're facing the Suns on the second night of back-to-back, and that's our week. So I think we've kind of come to the realization that whatever your expectation is, we should subtract 1 from it. Does that feel right to you guys?
Yeah, I think we all said 2-1 last week. I did caveat that I felt like it was a 1-2 week, but I wanted to be optimistic. But I think I'm off of being optimistic now.
Yeah, I said 3-0 at one point. Yeah. I was like, maybe 3-0. What do you guys think of that? All 3 teams are worse than us.
So, if we're going with the caveat that we subtract 1, this is an 0-3 week for us, right?
All right.
Because Golden State, Jake would probably call that a guaranteed W. He was right about that with Boston, so maybe he's the good luck charm that we don't have. So, but since he's not here, we'll probably lose that game. Denver, that's what I would call the pivot game.
Denver's
normally
4-6 in their last 10.
All right, I would call that.
The Suns are also 4-6 in their last 10.
So I would typically call Denver the pivot game in this situation, and then I would hope to beat Phoenix. But Phoenix on the second night of a road back-to-back after traveling from Denver to Phoenix, that's tough. And, we've been a little better on the road, not much better of late. And I don't see us having it. So I'm gonna put us down for a hard 0-3 this week.
Is that you subtracting there, or you actually think that?
I mean, I think we could sneak out the the Phoenix game. I think the Denver game is going to have to be the one, just because I think playing a back-to-back road games, where you're flying from Denver to Phoenix after being in, California the night before or 2 nights before, that's just a hard turnaround, and we haven't done well in that. So I think Phoenix is probably a loss for that reason, and I think Golden State's a loss because they're Golden State. So we would have to beat Denver, and I don't know that we're going to do that. So,
all right, so your official one is 0-3, but you're hoping for 1-2. What do you think, Tom?
My official one is 1-2, but I think that they're going to beat the Suns. The Nuggets, I know they've been 4-6 in the last 10, but they're also 16-6 at home. I mean, they're just traditionally a very good team at Mile High Stadium there. I think, Warriors loss. I think it's going to be a Nuggets loss. I think it's going to be a Suns win. You have to beat the Phoenix Suns. I don't care if you're playing five games in a row. Like
every time we say, you got to beat this team. You got to beat the Bulls. We've said you got to beat the Bulls 3 times on this podcast, and we have beat them 0 times.
Yes. All right. Well, we beat the Suns 120-107 on November 3rd at Madison Square Garden, so that was good. The one thing that you guys are forgetting is that Jake lives in Denver, and he's probably going to be at the game, so they have to win against the Nuggets.
There you go.
Going to beat the Nuggets, going to beat the Suns. There's still hope. We're going 2-1 this week, guys. And then once I subtract 1, we're going 1-2. We're going 1-2 this week, guys.
Once I subtract 1, we're -1-4.
So I'm on the record as saying 2-1. Officially.
I'm 0-3. Tom, you're 1-2.
Yeah, good. We got some diversity of opinions here.
Hey.
That's good.
What's left?
We'll give Jake 3-0.
Jake's 3-0. Okay.
All right, perfect. All right, well, that's all we got. We're gonna try to ask for questions next podcast. We were thinking about doing it this week. We tried, but it was 1 a.m. when our request for questions was tweeted out. So I'll try to do a better job. I'll try to do a better job next week looking for questions. Follow us at Talkin Knicks, a lot of basketball.com. We do some writing.
Yeah.
Tom especially.
Greg, we got Jake's manifesto coming out this week too, so look out for that. And yeah, guys, this has been a serviceable pod.
All right. Hey, thanks for talking with me. Hey, go Knicks.
Go Knicks.
Later, Greg.